"Daddy, please help her." The small, trembling voice cut through the quiet morning air, echoing across the school parking lot where sunlight had only just begun to warm the asphalt. The world was still waking, teachers unloading boxes, parents sipping coffee, and students drifting in half-awake clusters. But that cry snapped everything into focus. Heads turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Only the three men causing the fear kept walking, their shadows stretching long in the early light as they closed in. And in the middle of it all stood a father, silent, steady, and unreadable in the soft glow of dawn. No one yet knew who he truly was. But with that single plea from his daughter, the peace of the morning was about to break. The last school bell had barely faded when the parking lot began to empty, leaving behind long shadows stretching across cracked asphalt. Parents chatted, engines hummed, and kids sprinted toward waiting cars. Yet in the middle of the settling quiet stood Samuel Ridgeway, a calm, broad-shouldered older man helping his young daughter tie her shoelace beside his truck. He moved gently, almost reverently, as though the world outside his small circle didn't matter. But it mattered to Brent Collar, the swaggering ex-high school athlete who strutted across the lot with Duke Harmon and Riley Vance flanking him. Brent's voice cut through the air like a sneering blade. "Move it, old man. Some of us don't have all day." Parents turned. Kids froze. Brent smirked, loving the attention. Samuel simply looked up, eyes steady, unshaken. And Brent mistook that silence for weakness. The storm hadn't begun yet. Brent stepped closer, boots scuffing the pavement with purposeful arrogance. His two friends followed like vultures sensing a meal. Samuel placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder and gently stood, never breaking eye contact with Brent. His posture remained calm, but something in his stillness made a few bystanders shift uneasily. "Is that your truck?" Brent asked, motioning to the dusty, weathered pickup. "Figures. Looks as old as you." Duke chuckled. Riley spat on the ground. A few parents pretended not to stare, choosing the familiar comfort of silence over confrontation. Brent leaned in, enjoying the small crowd that had begun to gather. Samuel wiped a smudge of dirt from his daughter's cheek. "We're leaving," he said softly. But softness didn't satisfy men like Brent. "Oh, you'll leave when I say you leave." Brent planted a hand on the truck's door, blocking Samuel's path. "Guys like you always think respect comes with age. But it doesn't. You earn it. And I don't see anything impressive standing in front of me." Samuel didn't flinch. Didn't shift. Didn't even blink. His daughter tightened her grip on his sleeve, sensing the shift in the air. There was something about the way he stood, feet grounded, shoulders aligned, presence unmovable, that hinted at an ocean deeper than Brent could imagine. A mother watching from her car whispered to another, "Something's not right. That older man, he's too calm." But Brent didn't hear the warning in the wind. He was about to cross a line he'd never returned from. The tone shifted with a single shove. Brent pushed Samuel's shoulder, not hard but disrespectfully, the way a man tests an animal he thinks is tame. Samuel stepped back only enough to keep his daughter balanced behind him, his hand instinctively guiding her without a word. The crowd stiffened. Even Duke and Riley paused, uncertain. "Well?" Brent taunted. "Say something, Grandpa." Samuel inhaled once, deeply. "My daughter is here," he said quietly. "Walk away. All of you." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't bravado. It was a plea for their sake, not his. But Brent laughed. "Hear that? The old fossil thinks he's some kind of hero." Riley circled to Samuel's left. Duke moved to the right. Brent stood directly in front of him. A crude, sloppy triangle, 3 directions, no exit. Samuel's daughter clung to the back of his shirt, eyes wide. Parents watched from a distance, torn between fear and fascination. A teacher cracked open the school door, hesitated, and quickly stepped back inside. No one stopped it. No one called out. They all felt it now, the tension, the gravity, the strange, unsettling sensation that the quiet man in the center was not what he seemed. Samuel's jaw tightened, the first visible sign that the warrior beneath the father was stirring. "This will not end the way you think," he warned, voice low, steady, and final. Brent snorted. "It ends when I say it ends." No one saw Samuel shift his weight. No one saw the calculation behind his eyes. But everyone felt the moment the air itself changed. And Brent was too blind to realize he'd just awakened something ancient. The calm before a storm none of them were ready to face. Want the next part? Follow so you don't miss chapter 2. The confrontation should have ended when a voice tore through the parking lot speaker system. Everyone stepped back. The school's vice principal, Mr. Halden, stormed across the asphalt, tie flapping, clipboard tucked under his arm. He wasn't a soldier, but he had the authoritative stride of a man used to breaking up teenage brawls. Still, even he slowed as he approached the tight circle forming around Samuel and the three men. "What is going on here?" Halden barked, eyes darting from Brent's clenched fists to Samuel's unmoving posture. Brent smirked. "Relax, Teach. Just giving the old-timer a lesson." But Halden looked at Samuel longer than expected. Something about the veteran's stance, controlled, coiled, deliberate, made the administrator stop cold. He didn't know what he was seeing, but he felt it, the unmistakable aura of someone who had stood in real danger before, not this childish mockery. "Sir," Halden said carefully to Samuel, "is everything all right?" Samuel nodded once. "Please take my daughter inside." Halden didn't argue. He placed a protective hand on the little girl's shoulder and guided her swiftly toward the building. Brent laughed as she left. "Look at that. Even the staff knows you can't handle it." He didn't finish. Because Halden, retreating but watching, now wore an expression of dawning unease, like he realized something terrible was about to happen, and the wrong man was provoking it. And Brent, blinded by pride, walked straight into the jaws of his own downfall. The next step would shatter his arrogance. Brent leaned in, nostrils flaring with the thrill of performance. "Come on, old man. You gonna cry? You gonna beg?" His words were venom disguised as bravado. Samuel's gaze drifted past Brent, past Duke and Riley, past the growing ring of silent witnesses, to the school door, where his daughter stood safely inside, watching through the glass with wide, trembling eyes. That single glance steadied him. "Walk away," Samuel said again, softer this time, but edged with something Brent had never heard before, sorrow. Duke nudged Brent's elbow. "Man, I don't like this." Riley swallowed. "He's not normal." But Brent waved them off. "He's nothing." Then Halden, still hovering near the entrance, called out, "Mr. Ridgeway? I've been meaning to ask, your paperwork lists you as prior military. Which branch was that again?" Brent scoffed loudly. "Branch? Please." Guy probably shuffled papers in some basement. Samuel exhaled slowly and looked directly at Halden. "Navy." "Yeah." Brent mocked. "Do you even remember which end of a rifle?" Samuel cut him off politely. "It wasn't rifles." Halden froze. "Then, what was your specialty?" Samuel didn't answer immediately. Instead he rolled his sleeves up, revealing faint scars, circular, linear, and jagged, etched like forgotten languages across his forearms. The kind of scars men earn in places the world pretends don't exist. Brent's grin faltered. Samuel finally spoke. "I worked in water." Duke stepped back. Riley's face paled. And Brent's voice wavered for the first time. "In water? What does that even—" Samuel looked at him with a sadness that felt like judgment from a higher court. "It means you're making a mistake you cannot measure." The truth was inching closer, and denial had nowhere left to hide. The wind shifted, subtle and chilling. Even the lingering kids crossing the far end of the lot paused, sensing a change ripple outward like a shockwave. Brent squared his shoulders, desperate to reclaim control. "You talk like you're some kind of legend." Samuel didn't move. His voice became lower and steadier like a deep ocean current. "Not a legend. Just a man who served." But Halden stepped forward again, unable to hold the question back. "Mr. Ridgeway, your record, your emergency contact form, it listed multiple commendations I didn't recognize. Tier T7, Cold Lance, Black Tide Operations. What are those?" Brent blinked. Duke swore under his breath. Riley took another step back, shaking his head. Samuel closed his eyes for a moment, as though deciding whether the past should be spoken aloud. When he opened them, the weight behind his gaze silenced the entire lot. "I was with DevCrew," he said quietly. Brent frowned. "What's?" Halden gasped. "SEAL Team 6. Riley's knees visibly weakened. Duke muttered, "Oh God." But Samuel continued, voice unwavering, "Naval Special Warfare Development Group. 15 years. 16 classified operations. 2 rescues that never made the news. And 3 engagements where the only reason I'm alive is because someone else didn't make it." A hush fell, heavy and suffocating. Samuel's scars, once unnoticed, now looked like chapters from a history book no civilian would ever read. Brent tried to speak, but the words evaporated. You're lying." Samuel shook his head. "I have no reason to lie. But you have every reason to walk away." Parents covered their mouths. A student recording froze, lowered her phone and whispered, "He's real." Samuel took one small step forward. Brent flinched. Not because Samuel threatened him, but because the truth itself unmasked Brent's bravado as hollow noise. "You wanted respect," Samuel said. "But respect isn't forced. It's earned. And right now, all you've earned is a chance to stop." Brent finally understood, but far too late. The past Samuel tried to bury had just risen, and it changed everything. The man Brent mocked now stood as a living myth. Follow for the next chapter. The fallout is about to hit. Silence settled over the parking lot like dust after an explosion, soft, inevitable, and suffocating. Brent stood rooted to the asphalt, eyes flicking between Samuel's scars and his expressionless calm. The crowd no longer looked at Brent with admiration. They looked at him with something closer to disbelief and pity. Duke was the first to break. "Brent, man, we messed up." Riley nodded, trembling. We didn't know. We didn't know who he was." Samuel raised a hand gently, and both men instantly fell quiet. "This isn't about who I was," he said softly. "It's about who you choose to be today." Those words hit harder than any strike. Brent's chest tightened. The realization sank its claws into him. He hadn't just picked a fight with a stranger. He had humiliated a man who had faced nightmares underwater, in darkness, with no backup except the brothers who trusted him with their lives. A few parents stepped closer, respectful and cautious, like approaching a monument rather than a man. Samuel's daughter pressed her palms to the glass door of the school, watching her father silently. Her eyes glistened, not with fear but awe. Brent finally spoke, voice cracked. "Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell us to stop?" Samuel looked at him, really looked, and the weight of combat, memory and grief flashed through his eyes. "Because real strength isn't loud," he said. "And real warriors don't need to shout." Brent's breath trembled. His facade shattered completely. The arrogance drained from him, leaving only a frightened young man who had never understood the cost of the battles he pretended to mock. Respect swept through the crowd like a tide. But the reckoning had only just begun. The air still waited for justice to be delivered. Mr. Halden stepped forward, jaw set, clipboard tucked tightly under his arm. He wasn't military, but he understood authority, and he understood accountability. "Brent Collar," he said firmly, inside. "No. We have police on speed dial if needed." Brent opened his mouth but nothing came out. Duke and Riley backed away, hands raised, distancing themselves from the leader who had dragged them into this storm. Halden turned to Samuel. "Mr. Ridgeway, I'm deeply sorry." Samuel shook his head. "No apologies needed. Just make sure they learn from this." Halden nodded. "Oh, they will." He motioned toward the school office. Brent hesitated, staring at Samuel with a strange mixture of fear, regret, and something unfamiliar to him, respect. For the first time in his life, Brent Collar walked without swagger. Halden marched the three men toward the doors, silence following them like a shadow. Each step felt like a verdict. Parents parted as they passed, not out of fear but out of quiet acknowledgement. Actions have consequences, and arrogance eventually finds its wall. When the doors finally shut, Samuel stood alone in the middle of the lot. No triumph. No pride. Just a man breathing slowly, grounding himself in the present. A father who had defended his daughter without raising a single hand. Justice had been served, not with fists, not with fury, but with truth. But one last moment still waited to unfold. The school door opened again, this time slowly, timidly. Samuel's daughter stepped out, clutching her small backpack, her eyes locked on her father as if seeing him for the first time. She approached him carefully, her voice barely a whisper. "Daddy, were you really one of those soldiers?" Samuel knelt, resting his hands gently on her shoulders. "I was someone who tried to protect people," he said. "That's all." "But," she hesitated, "you didn't fight them." Samuel smiled softly. "Because the strongest people don't fight unless they have to. And today, I didn't have to." She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. The weight of the moment settled, calm, warm, and healing. Parents nearby wiped their eyes. Even Mr. Halden paused at the doorframe, humbled. Samuel lifted his daughter into the truck, closed the door gently, and took one last glance at the quiet parking lot where arrogance had tried and failed to defeat dignity. He whispered, almost to himself, "Peace is the only victory worth keeping." The engine rumbled to life. And the legend faded into the dusk like a shadow returning to the deep. But those who witnessed it would never forget the man named Samuel Ridgeway. The memory of his stillness would echo for years. If you want more stories like this, follow for the next chapter. Long after the truck disappeared beyond the row of pines, the parking lot remained unnaturally quiet, as though the ground itself was still absorbing what had unfolded. Those who stood there, parents, staff, and students, felt the weight of a truth they had almost missed. Legends don't always wear uniforms. Some simply walk among us, carrying histories they never boast about and battles they never recount. Samuel Ridgeway never asked for recognition. He never sought applause. But for a fleeting moment, beneath a dying sunset outside a simple school, the world glimpsed the kind of strength that doesn't roar, it whispers. And whispers, sometimes, are louder than war.